So Mark, when thinking about core banking transformation, people often talk about 4 key pillars that a bank needs to think about. One of those is obviously the technology, then the business itself, the processes, etc. The people, so upskilling, and then finally, obviously the culture, managing a change of culture with that technology. So considering that, what would your advice be to banks when looking at partners, and why do you think they should consider potentially both a consulting partner and also a dedicated systems integrator partner?
Well, let's maybe go through those 4 pillars kind of one by one. I think from a technology perspective, a consulting firm and an SI firm should bring different sets of capabilities. So when you think about making that technology choice, obviously, first of all, setting out the technology strategy and the vision that you want to embark upon and what that target state looks like, I think that's the role where consulting firms can help organizations. But actually, I think as you start moving through technology choices, I think both a consulting partner and an SI partner should be involved in that stage. I think that's where we see the greatest successes on these types of programs. And then obviously, as you start moving down into the actual implementation of the technology, I think a consulting partner can play a role from a perspective of the program assurance and driving the program and the pace of the program, but actually coupled with a SI who brings the skills and capabilities in that new technology, probably which is potentially new to the bank from the start. So I think that is critically important, and actually that's a role that where clearly an SI and a consulting partner can come together and really help drive the pace of implementation for a financial services organisation. I think if I then move to business, I think from a business perspective, understanding what the business wants, the translation of those requirements into what does that mean from a technology perspective, I think is a role that a consulting firm should play and can definitely help accelerate through. But actually, again, why do you need both of those firms? Because an SI has to be able to receive those business requirements and understand and translate what does that mean into technology capabilities. I think that's really critically important. I think that becomes significantly important in the journey that an organisation must go on. The translation, I think, quite often of business into technology somehow gets lost. It's like business talks one language, technology talk another language, and somehow they never quite mesh together. On the people one, I think the combination of skills that you need as you transition to new technologies is really important. I think the ability of a SI partner to bring those skills in, people who have had first-hand experience of working with some of this new technology, I think is really critically important. I think from a consulting firm perspective, again, understanding perhaps at the higher level the architecture, the design principles that a financial organisation wants to hold in place, the design that it wants to build to, I think is a role that a consulting firm could play. So again, when you bring those two things together, the people aspect and the capabilities and skills that you need become critically important to success. Lots of examples where core banking transformations have failed because the people haven't had the right skills, had the right hands-on experience, have had a very certain way of working. You know, we GFT like to work very agile in our approach. And I think that is, again, bringing that speed and getting people to work at that pace, I think is also something where a consulting firm and an SI firm could work. And then from a culture perspective, you know, embarking on these programs is a multi-year journey. And actually the culture that you embed in the organization of those programs from the very start is really important. Again, I think bringing together the culture of an SI partner, the culture of a consulting partner, but actually creating the culture of the venture and the program, I think is critically important. Everybody will come with their own individual firm cultures, but really creating a culture of the program which is fast-paced, energetic, but with a real desire to get into the detail and understand the implications, I think is critically important as you embark on these programs. And if you get that wrong at the beginning, then clearly the program is unlikely to be a success. the culture becomes one of toxic culture rather than an energetic culture which can really drive people to success.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Mark, and just really understanding how banks can leverage the power of different partners and how they overlap and work really well together for transformational change success. So thanks again for coming in.
Well, thank you very much for having me.